What's going on, guys? Spidey here. I'm on vacation in the Bahamas in one of my favorite resorts. I've been having an awesome week, but I wanted to take some time to give you guys another epic video on how to detect lies and get to the truth. And I have a very special guest on the channel today. He spent 20 years in the US military as an interrogation expert. He now trains intelligence agencies and civilians. He's written the best book on persuasion I've ever read. He's written the best book on body language and people reading I've ever read. He's a personal friend of mine, and I can't be more excited to have him here. Welcome to the channel, Mr. Chase Hughes.
Being here.
Chase, welcome to the channel.
Thanks, man.
Excited to have you.
Glad to be here.
So we've got some scenes here from Hollywood Interrogations that I'm going to show Chase, and I'm going to ask him a question about the accuracy of those scenes, and he's going to give you guys some really good information on what to look for when you're trying to get the truth out of someone. He's going to tell us which of these techniques are effective, which of these are completely made up by Hollywood, and at the end he's going to rate each one on, like, from 1 to 100 how real this feels to him. Some of them might be like, no, that would never happen in real life. Some of them might be, that's a really good reflection of what would happen in real life. Ready?
Yeah.
We are starting with a scene from one of my favorite shows, Criminal Minds, all about profiling. If you guys are into profiling and sort of reading body language, there's a lot of great information on this, a lot of great information about serial killers and psychopaths. And this is more about what happens before the interrogation than the interrogation itself. So here we go.
Are these the crime scene photos?
Some of them, yes.
Oh. God. I knew what he did, of course. But I, never saw 23 victims like this.
Please. Paying attention to these items projects a kind of importance on them when he comes in. I'd like to give him the opportunity to show us which parts of the crimes he thinks are important.
Sorry, of course.
Chains left on, right?
That's probably a good idea.
No, it won't be necessary.
You won't?
You sure?
Mm-hmm. We're just gonna talk, right, Chester?
So a lot of great stuff going on there, like before the guy even walks into the room, we could see the agent sort of already starting to put some psychological plays into place. Mm-hmm. One of the things he says is, please don't look at those because we want him to indicate to us what's important. How much of the interrogation, and I'm not talking just like in like the military or in like legal interrogation, but even in day-to-day, like when you're trying to get information out of someone, how much of your game plan is done before the interrogation actually begins?
I would say a good 50% of interrogation is what happens before the interrogation. So we're prioritizing what we're going to spend the most time on, who the person is that we're trying to talk to, what their behavior profile is, and how is my behavior going to need to change in the interrogation room to maximize the persuasion abilities that I have over the other person, and what's going to trigger them to be more open, more honest, more connected, and lower some of these barriers down, because everybody wears a mask. So what we're trying to do is see who the person is behind the mask so I can communicate to them. So I think one of the biggest mistakes in sales, interrogation, or persuasion is trying to sell to speak to, or to persuade the mask that a person is wearing.
The security guard asked, should we remove the cuffs? And one agent, who was a little more squeamish, a little more intellectual, was like, yeah, I think that's a good idea. But then the other one, who has a tougher demeanor, goes, no, take him off. Take off the cuffs. Because, so is that something, is he reading the person and sort of figuring out that, like, this will create a shift in power, you think? Like, is that something that would happen in the real world, to where he goes, no, take him off, it's okay?
Yeah, so the moment you encounter somebody with a strong need to feel powerful or to feel like they're in control, you want to give that to them initially to kind of to lure them in to becoming more open. So they might get a spike in feeling powerful at the beginning.
Wow.
So the inherent belief in the other person of the interrogator's authority is always there. He's running the show, so he doesn't need to act a certain way to be dominant, because the authority is inherently present throughout the entire situation. One big mistake here, and this is wildly proven in all kinds of studies, is that the more people are in the room, the less likely you are to get a confession. So having 2 police officers in there is a big mistake.
Wow.
you're way more likely, it's sometimes to the effect of 60% more likely to get a confession if it's one person and another person. And having a tie on also lowers your ability to get an interrogation. So I would
get a
highly
confession.
recommend. Yes, I'm sorry, to get a confession from that person. Yeah.
A tie, because it makes it to business as opposed to like we're just having a conversation. Is that what it is?
Correct. But if I was interrogating somebody for Wall Street crime, somebody with like a Securities and Exchanges Commission violation of insider trading, they're used to seeing people in ties all the time. They're used to seeing their authority figures and their bosses wearing a tie. I will be wearing a tie during that interrogation. Wow. So it's based on the person we're speaking to, for sure.
Wow. Guys, for more information on reading people this effectively and identifying their needs, you have to check out Chase's book, 6 Minute X-Ray. I've been profiling people for a decade, and I learned things in that book that opened my eyes, and there will be a link in the description where you guys can grab that. And there's not a book on the subject I recommend more, so guys, make sure to check that out. So this scene right here, if you had to rate it on like from 1 to 100 in terms of real world, where would you place that?
35%.
Really?
Yeah.
What lost that much?
Number one, any high-end interrogation or any well-trained interrogator will never have a table in the middle of the room. That's only Hollywood.
Wow.
The best place to put a table.
It's always there in Hollywood.
Yeah. So the best place to put a table, if you're ever conducting an interrogation yourself, let's say this is the table. You want to be here, and you want your suspect here. So there's minimal barriers between you and the other person. So there's no adversarial relationship. So this is the ideal relationship. So, but as an interrogator, I might be positioned a little bit further to my right, to where we're kind of almost facing the same direction, but we're not oppositional. We're not facing each other directly. So that's mistake number one. Mistake number two, as far as the movie mistakes go, is all of these things being laid out on the table with images. Yes, that does happen, but it's not something that's automatically revealed at the beginning.
Can I guess why? You want them to wonder what you actually have.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yes. Am I ready for an interrogation?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. So another thing that's very common in interrogations is to have a few file folders out with large labels on them. And the large labels might say Sinaloa drug cartel, crimes on Mayberry Street, or whatever this person may be likely to pay attention to, and to see where their eyes continually drift in the very beginning of the conversation, and that becomes the final thing to be brought up. Wherever the attention is the final thing. So we want them to know that there is more information in our possession than they could possibly realize. Mistake 3 is these dramatic red lights outside the door in this kind of like chamber-looking interrogation room.
By the way, pause. I want you guys to know that's the first time he saw that scene. We didn't rehearse this, he didn't have time to look at it. So just to give you guys an idea of how tuned in he is, that how many of you noticed? Tell me in the comments, honestly, how many of you noticed those red lights outside? I've watched that scene 4 times. I have to go back and check, but I know for a fact that he's right. So there's things, that awareness is such a great skill. Continue.
Thanks. So you'll not see that. That's kind of a Hollywood thing. Most of the time it's going to be like someone's office and they've like painted over the windows. It's not as, think of a government budget in real life versus a government budget in Hollywood. Like think of your local post office. That's probably more likely the budget that you're going to be dealing with in an interrogation room.
Okay.
So, and finally, they want to, I'm guessing, I don't know, I've never seen this clip, I've never seen this show, this episode at least. I'm guessing they want to portray this person as some kind of a psychopath. Mm-hmm. Way less likely to come in, A, with these fancy prescription lenses. That's a no-no. They give you, there's custom jail glasses and stuff, and like having this like Hollywood-looking Louis Vuitton or whatever these things are. Not going to happen. Number 2, his demeanor with the smirk and trying to look tough is way less likely to be a psychopath. A psychopath is likely to address the scenario and become who they need to be. He would not go in with the tough face on. If it was a psychopath, it'd be more likely to go in open and looking around and trying to appear innocent until they can establish some form of dominance or control over the situation.
Okay, so in this next clip, we're again looking at pre-interview and sort of the first words out of the interrogator's mouth to client. This is from the movie Law Abiding Citizen, one of my favorite movies with
So
Gerard
not
Butler.
the same show.
No, no, no.
Different deal.
Different
Okay.
deal.
Don't worry, he's just disarming the guy, letting him feel easy.
What I'm about to tell you, I don't want anybody else to hear. As a prosecutor, I'm breaking all the rules right now, and I don't give a damn because I'm a father. I have a little girl. And what you did, bravo. The world is better without Darby and Ames. You're not gonna see a tear shed from me or anybody in my office. With that being said, I have a job to do. I'm going to ask you some very simple and direct questions. I suggest that you answer them in the same fashion.
So this clip leads to one of my favorite interview scenes, but I wanted to talk about the way it's set up. Now, again, I don't know anything about interrogation, but I do know a lot about confession in social situations. It's part of what I do. It's typically a good idea to keep someone in what we call short-term thinking. And in other words, you don't want them to think of the consequences of what they're about to say. You just want to keep them in the now. I feel like this was a pretty effective way to say to the guy, like, you know, I'm with you on this. Like, what you did, and he goes and he sits on the table right next to him and he pats him on the hand. To me, that looks like it would be a good way to start things, to create this relationship of like, you know what, if it's just me, I'm with you. And we use that sometimes in sales, we sometimes use it in persuasion, but in interrogation, is that something that would be done, helpful, useful?
Yeah. So in this clip, which I've never seen this movie, I recognize both of the actors. You would see something similar to that, but that'd be more likely to be the interrogator being the one saying those things.
Yeah.
And not the prosecutor.
Oh, right.
So he identified himself as the prosecutor. And again, we see the tie being brought in here, but agreeing with what they did, there's a few things that interrogators want to do, and I'll give you a quick list right now. We want to minimize, socialize, project, rationalize, and then emphasize the truth. Those are kind of the 5 basic things that we're trying to do. So what he's doing is minimizing and rationalizing, and then saying that everybody else would understand the world's a better place. That's socializing. And then he's starting to emphasize the truth towards the end, and as he's clicking the record button, definitely don't want to do that. In a real interrogation, if like in the middle of a conversation someone clicks the record button and then it starts recording, that is grounds for a mistrial, because then they can say he told me this, he promised me all these things, and then hit the record button. So that's kind of a recipe for disaster. You always want to have everything on video and audio.
So what are you giving this clip 1 to 100?
1 to 100, I would say 65.
Oh, I like it.
Yes.
Where did it lose points?
It lost points with being filmed in like some abandoned bank, and like just setting and scene was a little bit off. And these guys were like in the background cockily talking about how the interrogation's going. Oh, it's just warming them up. That's real. Like, even if someone doesn't know anything about interrogation, they'll still be like cocky talking in the back about what's going on in the background.
All right, this next scene is really going to be about the meat of interrogation technique and sort of the demeanor of an interrogator. We're going to see something we see very often in Hollywood that I myself am suspicious about, and I would like to know from you.
Okay.
How these last 6 months been for you, James?
Oh.
Not too good, huh? Oh no, your whole life is falling apart, isn't it? Oh yeah, you gotta be feeling a loss of control, sense of abandonment, and I would guess, a little impotent maybe.
Come on, man. Give me something. Why did your wife leave you?
What happened, James? She get bored? I mean, you don't seem all that exciting to me. Oh, that's what it is. You're done before she even gets started. She left you for another man who has...
Okay! James, that was exciting. Did I hit a nerve?
I want to go home.
Oh, you want to go home?
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry, that ain't about to happen, so why don't you come over here and sit your ass down? I said sit down!
If I'm done talking to you, I will tell you what you are done doing. You hear me?
So, yeah. We see in Hollywood a lot of the good cop, bad cop thing, And my question to you is this. I suspect I know the answer because I see how this translates to like day-to-day life. How often is an interrogation like trying to trigger the guy aggressively? Like, first of all, before you go on, the profile for this criminal was predator. How often are you using that, if ever, to like really lean on the guy with that amount of aggression and just trying to get them on tilt, if ever?
I've never seen it done.
Okay.
And the biggest mistake here that you can see in this clip specifically is that if I want him to feel out of balance, I want him to feel like he's losing control, I want him to feel a little more impotent in the situation. The moment that I say, are you feeling X, Y, and Z, he automatically tells himself no and starts to reassure himself to behave in the opposite way.
Wow.
So I want those behaviors of feeling a lack of control to be out of awareness. I want that to be way below his conscious awareness. So feeling lack of control, I want to give him a little bit of control to begin with, to let him feel like he might have a chance at running the show. So he's going to start to open up because he's getting the neurochemicals that he needs based on his background and his history here to start feeling like he can control the situation.
Right. I saw your face while you were watching that. You were like, this is not right. But we see it so often in Hollywood, right?
It's all over Hollywood, and it makes for great TV.
Absolutely.
The show's good. My kids watch it. I don't think I've seen a full episode, but my kids watch it. They like it. But like this, like plopping evidence down on the table doesn't happen. It'd be more likely the interrogator is, if you're being interrogated, the interrogator should be on your side. So when I'm talking about the police as an interrogator, I'm going to say they. I'm going to say them. I'm not going to come in with a gun and a badge. That's advised in the Reed technique from the 1970s. It says that you have a gun and a badge on. That puts you in the same basket as police. So I'm not the one doing the investigation. I just want to find out why this happened. I'm not sure what evidence they have, what they are collecting, what they are doing. So this big thing coming in, this big piece of evidence, if I was that interrogator and I had to present this somehow, I would have a police officer pull me out in the hallway, maybe a police officer who is more dominant than me, or I would tell them to yell at me a little bit, so I would kind of be a little bit lower to, when I go back in the room, he's going to feel more in charge until I present this evidence. But the police brought the evidence, not me.
Is this also the reason why, like, the FBI consciously would often make an effort for the person they're talking to know that they're a entirely different organization than the people who arrested him and brought him here? Or is that just because the paperwork, that's the way it is?
No. That's very planned and very strategic.
So also, you were talking about how you'll never say we when you're talking about you and the police. But in social sort of truth detection or lie detection or truth extraction, I would say we, referring to the person that I'm talking to. Like, we can figure this out.
Yes.
We is this, them is the cops.
Yes, there's two teams.
We're one team.
Yes, we're one team, me and the person being interrogated. Police are on another team.
Wow.
I'm just here to help you craft the story, to get ahead of all this evidence that's about to come out. And this is your one chance to kind of get your story out there and get in front of the trouble. And if the trouble is in front of you, you have no control, you have no ability to feel any kind of power over the situation and how other people are going to perceive it.
All right. So keeping in mind that my scale doesn't go lower than 0, on a scale from 0 to 100, where does that one go?
I would say 9.1.
It still got 9%.
Yeah.
What's the 9%?
Scene, setting, and then you can see the guy's walls get up when he's yelling at him. It's like, this interrogator, you can tell from his personality, if it was a real person, obviously, would be the kind of person that is exerting power for their own sense of power, not to get a result from the interrogation. So this is the alpha interrogator, I would say, is a way different type of human being. If you ever watched Andy Griffith and imagine what Andy Griffith might look like in an interrogation, that's the alpha. When you see the beta, the low-level interrogators, they're the ones who are obsessed or concerned with power, status, and hierarchy.
Wow.
They want to feel like they're the one in charge.
For those of you who watch Criminal Minds, you know for a fact that what he just described is Agent Morgan's exact description. So like, just look at how crazy this is. The guy doesn't even watch the show and he knows exactly the archetype. What?
That's the guy.
All right, man. Well, Chase, thank you so much. Guys, I will leave some links. Chase is on a YouTube channel called The Behavior Panel. It is such a great show if you guys are interested in this kind of stuff. By the way, I did a slow blink there. I want you, because you're going to watch it. I did this. I said, it's a great, but this was for emphasis. Sometimes we do this as an indicator, right?
Yes.
Right. I was like, it is a great show, but I don't want you to think that I was blocking because I don't believe that. It is a great show. I watch every week. You know this because you get my notes every week.
Yeah.
Yeah. I watch every episode. They take real cases from the real world, really current events. They break it down. You guys will see the body language. You guys will see when people are being deceptive or when the probability of deceptive is high. They're very humble. They never say for sure it's this. Your learning curve in this stuff will go from wherever it is now to 100 real quick. So highly recommended. That link is in the description. So is Chase's, all his courses on his website, the behavioral table of elements for free. And Chase, I can't thank you enough for doing this.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure, man. And I look forward to having you back on the channel because that was a lot more educational than any of the stuff I talk about. Thanks, man.
Thanks for having me on. See you guys.